This episode is brought to you by Ludacris and his inspirational quote, "She had me going crazy, oh I was starstruck. She woke me up a daily, don't need no Starbucks."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, my people.
Hello, my people! Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. It is 5 a.m. right now. We're about to hop on a plane to Halifax with my wife, my son, my business partner, Huang, and his partner, Nani. And I'm a little tired, but I'm very excited. I still remember the episode with Erin Bury a couple days ago, and it was a masterclass on self-awareness, team building, entrepreneurship, following your dreams, supporting those around you who have dreams and are passionate about them. So what do? You hop on the train with them and help them with your skill set. To me, it was just fascinating to see the powerhouse of a businesswoman that Erin is. And the best part is, like, she's done everything she's accomplished and helped thousands of people along the way. You may be thinking, what are you talking about? Well, you'll get it pretty soon when you hear her story. For the time being, let me read Erin's bio so you get a little bit more excited. Erin Bury is an entrepreneur, speaker, startup advisor, and former technology journalist. She is the co-founder and CEO of Willful, an online estate planning platform that makes it easy for Canadians to create a will in less than 20 minutes. At Willful, she was responsible for driving the company's mission to make it easier for Canadians to prepare for and deal with death in a digital age. Erin is a frequent speaker with Speaker Spotlight, and she has appeared in publications including the New York Times, Forbes, and CNN, and was named one of Marketing Magazine's top 30 under 30 marketers. Wow. One of the things that I love about her the most is that she is also a board member at Save the Children Canada and the co-chair of the Tech for Sick Kids Advisory Council for Sick Kids. She is also an advisor for startups including Quill and Pawsey. And my favorite part of her bio is her claim to fame is being retweeted by Oprah twice. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. My friends, if you're listening to this episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube is actually video, so you can see us in color, radiant. You can leave us a comment. We would love that. Subscribe. And our favorite is when you screenshot the episode and then tag us, whatever social media you use. For example, Instagram at Stephan Dyer and at Erin Bury, my friends. Well, she's a powerhouse. She is a high performer. She is a dog lover. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this episode with Erin Bury like I know you will. In 3, 2, 1, go. Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast. I have here with me the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable Erin Bury from Willful. How are you, Erin?
Hey, Stephan. I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Very good. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for accepting this invitation. We met each other on LinkedIn, and I was immediately impressed with everything you accomplished. And the cool part is that we were, at that time, my wife and I, doing our Willful will. So I didn't really know the chicken or the egg, what came first, me meeting you or adding each other on LinkedIn, or doing the will and then getting to you, or maybe someone messaged me. I don't even remember what happened, but
you know what? I feel like whichever way it happened, it was meant to be. And the only thing I regret is that my background is not nearly as cool as yours. I need to get my vision board ready for the next time I do a Zoom call.
Yes, these are all my stand-up comedy shows everywhere that I've traveled to, and and all the things this is like my positive room. This is the den in my apartment. And I have like my favorite books, my favorite flyers of the shows that I've done, the festivals that I've been at, the little vision board, the Stephan Dyer, the World Cup. I'm a big soccer fan. So
nice.
Actually,
and that's different from the crying closet, which is more the negative room in your house.
Yes, exactly. Actually, I just remembered how we met. In fact, I posted on LinkedIn one of the best ideas that I had during the pandemic. And it was this Kanban board of goals for each area of life, which I have right here. So it says Mal Pensando, which is my public speaking and comedy school, then Stephan Dyer comedy, personal development, physical, spiritual, financial, relationships, lifestyle, and family. So all the areas of life. And then I have the Post-its for each column. The 3 columns are want to do on the left, in the middle it's in progress, and then it's done. And because I posted it, it kind of became like a little viral on LinkedIn. I mean, on Instagram, a bit on LinkedIn. And then one of the Post-its said, set up will for Liam. Set up our wills for our son Liam. And somebody, I'm not sure if it was you or I think it was my friend Izzy, who may have recommended Willful. And I said,
that rings a bell.
Yeah. Do you know Izzy Pialish?
I do know Izzy, and I remember your post because I remember thinking, wow, this person really has their stuff together, that they're, putting out all these goals down in each area of their life. Like, I should make one of these boards, although I clearly haven't.
So then I said, sorry, we already went to see this guy downtown and we already have it under control. But then this guy, I mean, I don't want to just whatever happened. He had all our documents, all our information for no joke. This is not an exaggeration. 2 months. I follow up with him and I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, sorry, I haven't started. I'm like, what do you mean you haven't started? It's been 2 months. I'm like, you know what? Just don't start. Don't continue. I'm just going to go on Willful and I don't even have to go visit anyone. And I think that is how our relationship with Willful and consequently you started.
There you go. Well, I'm very glad that you are a customer. And as we were chatting about prior to hitting record, we're expecting our first child in about a month. So I'm going to take all of the tips from you.
Yes. Oh my God. I have so many, but it may come up in the interview, but we're here to talking about you. I'm very interested. So you are the co-founder and CEO at Willful. And for the people who don't know, our audience who's listening to this, Willful is an online estate planning platform. And this is what I love the most because the language is so easy to read. An online estate planning platform, okay, that makes it easy for Canadians to create a will in less than 20 minutes. I find that in less than 20 minutes is the best thing on that sentence because it just makes it so user-friendly. Because I was in wealth management for 7 years at Scotiabank, so I know what estate planning platform, I know all about that. But a lot of people, it's like, oh, will estate, I don't know. But in less than 20 minutes, it's like, I can do that.
It's one of those things where, I mean, listen, we don't learn about personal finance of any kind in school, which is a whole other problem. We don't talk about this stuff at the dinner table, right? Money is still one of those big taboos, whether it's family or friends. And so, you find yourself in your 20s, 30s, 40s with kids, with assets, and that this concept of a will is something you need, but it seems overwhelming, right? It's like, oh, I got to go to lawyers. There's jargon. I have to gather all my financial statements. There's all this prep I'm going to have to do. And 25 hours later, I'm not going to have a finished document. So I think the biggest myth that we try to dispel is actually your will is a pretty simple document. It just says who's going to be my executor, who's going to take care of kids or pets, and where are my assets going to go. It's not actually as overwhelming as you think. So I think to your point, the 20 minutes, it's not some infomercial marketing claim that we're never going to be able to meet. It really does take that long as you know the people that you want to appoint in those roles.
Yeah. You know what? It was actually a beautiful experience for me because I went ahead and I talked to my wife and we're like, well, we don't have family in Canada because it's just my wife and myself. My wife is from Venezuela. I'm from Costa Rica. She became a permanent resident a couple years ago. I became a citizen a couple years ago. And we have one of her cousins here. So we talked to her, which we really trust. So in the case that anything would happen to us, like, would you be willing to take care of Liam, or all these questions that you get when you're doing the online will through Willful. It's not just taking care of Liam, but it's the assets and everything. And then I had conversations with my family about it. My dad is in the States, so that would be the next person that's closer to Canada. So it was a nice conversation. And then you're like, dude, I'm a grown up. I need to have these conversations and I can't shy away from them. I think a lot of cultures, they don't want to talk about death. But I went on your website, which I love, by the way, and I love this sentence. It said, Willful is a tool I wish existed when my family went through an unexpected loss. And it's so beautiful because you need it so much, but you don't have it when you least expect it. So why not get it now? It's 20 minutes.
Yeah, and that's really the genesis, right? I mean, my husband and I are not estate lawyers by background. He has a background in trades and construction. I have a background in marketing and company operations. And his uncle passed away unexpectedly, and his aunt said, okay, Kev, go chase down his coworkers, find out if he wanted to be buried or cremated, find out if he had, where the life insurance papers are. And it was just one of those moments where it's like, there's got to be a better way, right? That typical kind of aha moment. And when we looked into it, we're like, we're not the kind of people who are going to spend $1,500 at a lawyer's office, not just because of the price tag, but also because we're digital natives, right? Like, we do everything online. We invest our money on Wealthsimple, and we use Airbnb and Uber and all of these apps. So I'm just not going to make an appointment in a physical office and go in. Like, that's just not our behavior as consumers in 2021, right? So that was kind of the genesis, is, can we reduce the barriers? And cost is one of them, but so is, accessibility, especially for new parents. You have to get your baby into a, car and drive to an office. I mean, this was pre-COVID when people were still going to appointments in offices, but yeah, that's really the goal, is that no family has to be sitting around saying, what did so-and-so want? Because they've taken the time, not just to put together the will, but also to have the conversations. And to your point, the stigma around death is pretty intense. People will do almost anything to avoid talking about or thinking about their own mortality. And you compare that with cultures like Japan, where death is actually kind of a normal part of life. It's very celebrated. It's talked about, even cultures like Mexico and others, right? But Canada's not that. We are very averse to talking about it.
It's crazy. You'd think, coming from Latin America, you'd think that the first world, one of the greatest countries on earth, Canada, would be more organized. I think on average, people are more responsible and do more financial planning and estate planning in Canada, if you average it out, than like Mexico or El Salvador or Ecuador. But you were right. In Mexico, they have the Day of the Dead. It's something that is not as taboo as it is in Canada. Also, when you really think about it, I really love to study high performance and productivity. The time value, if we allocate a value, a dollar amount to what your hour costs, you're not going to go and spend like 60 hours chasing people down once you're like super sad and devastated that you had a family loss, versus spending 20 minutes having uncomfortable conversations that become less uncomfortable the more you have them, and spend arguably less than 2 hours in the entire process. And then you don't have that worry in the back of, you're not just like avoiding responsibility. You're like, oh, I actually did something for myself and I feel proud of myself.
Yeah. And people, I mean, listen, it's easy to if you're listening to this, chances are, about 2/3 of Canadians don't have a will or have a will that's out of date. And so you're probably listening to this thinking, oh my God, it's been on my list and I've been putting it off. And that's the biggest challenge we have, is a sense of urgency, right? Because everybody assumes, well, I'm going to live to be 100. So do I really need to create my will today? And it's one of those things where, if you wait until it's too late, right? It's kind of like life insurance. Like if you pass away without life insurance, it's too late. You got to get the policy beforehand so that your family is provided for. So it's one of those tasks that can seem easy to push down the list. But what we saw with COVID is we saw a huge influx of people in the early days, because everybody who had been putting it off for years was like, oh my God, the unexpected can happen. And I might actually get sick, and like, I better finish this will thing. So that's normalized a bit, the fear and anxiety around the initial stages of COVID. But in general, I think it's heightened the conversation about emergency planning in general, whether that's life insurance, wills, emergency funds, etc.
A big part of my audience is young professional immigrants. A lot of them are in Canada. A lot of them are in Latin America. And they're really interested in the nitty gritty, like to get down to it. So I just want to spend the next 90 seconds. What is a will? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, I will. I'll do it. But they don't even know what a will is. Yeah. So if I had to describe it, obviously you are a million times better than me at this, but it's basically saying, in the case that I die and or my wife dies at the same time, who is going to have my assets, my home, my pets, who's going to take care of my children? And potentially this may save a lot of problems, because in some jurisdictions, in some countries, it may have to go to a court or a lawyer for them to decide what's going to happen with your assets and your family and your pets, which may not be in the best interest of your family, because they don't know your family as well as you do. Is this accurate?
I was going to say, you're hired, Stephan. That was a great description. Yes. So, I mean, at its core, a will is a simple legal document that says not only who's going to take care of children and pets and where your assets are going to go, but also it appoints someone named your executor who's going to wrap up your life and execute the wishes in the will. If you don't have a will, in countries like Canada, there's a government formula that dictates exactly how your assets would be distributed. So, if you don't like a sibling or you've had a falling out with your parents, my suggestion is Google that formula. Who would actually get your stuff if you passed away without a will? Because it may not be the people that you would want. And to your point, if you don't name an executor or a guardian for kids and pets, the courts are going to appoint those people.
Wills for dummies here. What is an executor for people?
Yes. So an executor is a person that you appoint who basically acts on your behalf when you pass away. So they are imbued with all of the power to handle your funeral and burial wishes. They're going to move all of your assets into a central bank account. They're going to, if you have a home, they're going to pack up your stuff and sell it, donate things to Goodwill. They're going to distribute all of your assets to the people that you've appointed in your will, your beneficiaries who are going to receive those assets. So they're basically your representative after you pass away, and they have the legal obligation to carry out the wishes in your will. Now, if you don't appoint them, then your family is going to have to go to the courts, apply to be that person. And it just, to your point, it takes longer. It costs more money because you have to get lawyers and courts involved. And again, your assets are going to go according to a formula. Now, there is a misconception. A lot of people say, well, I got to get a will because I don't want the government to get my money. The only situation in which the government in Canada would get your assets is if you have no living heirs or relatives whatsoever. So you don't have to be worried about that in most cases. But there's a lot of cases where, people don't have any relatives, and then it goes to the Bank of Canada.
Okay, I get it. So, this is huge. Imagine your brother or your cousin or your parents that you don't like gets everything that you worked so hard for. Or maybe the government appoints someone in your family that your kids hate. Imagine how horrible that would be. I mean,
well, yeah. And that's the problem, right? I mean, especially now that I'm about to become a parent, I know it's the hardest thing to think about, right? Not being there and your kids being around still, right? It's like a gut wrenching conversation to have with your partner. But Kevin and I talk about estate planning probably more than the average person. The other day we were talking about how you can get cremated into like a hockey puck or anything that you are interested in. So these are like normal dinner table conversations for us, but we had a conversation about who would be our guardian. Is it going to be his brother? Is it going to be my sister? And like every one of our customers who reaches out to us about this, we didn't agree at first. We had to kind of weigh the pros and cons and like, I don't want your brother because this, and I don't want your sister because of this. And we always say like, it's better to just have a choice in there because, you know, picture like the absolute worst person that you wouldn't want taking care of your child. They can apply, right? Like there's nothing stopping them if you don't appoint a guardian in your will.
The craziest thing is they might apply.
100%.
Man, when we had that conversation, it's crazy. Like the point system to determine who's going to be taking care of your pets and kids is like, what about Johnny? No, that guy parties too much. No, what about Andrea? And no, Andrea doesn't even do sports. We want Liam to do sports. No, what about your mom? No, she wouldn't even want to take him to daycare. What about your dad? And it's like the weirdest arguments.
Yeah, and it's almost like if your friends and family could hear you debating their candidacy, they'd never talk to you again. Because you're basically 100%. Just like, we did the exact same thing. Like, no, this person doesn't travel. We want them to be worldly. No, this person's too busy with work. No, like you're basically, it's like a process of elimination thing more than anything. Here's all the people we don't want to be guardians. So we're left with these two. I guess they'll be good.
Exactly. Oh my God. I love it. Okay. So now now that people know what a will is, what an executor is, and now they're thinking of all the worst people that they don't want to take care of their kids and pets, they're going to go on willful.com or willful.ca.
.co.
Yes. I'm on here.
Or .ca. We own both.
Willful. Will as in WILLFUL.co. Okay. Now that we've talked about that and they're going to go and get their wills, now I want to really talk about how did you get here? And what I mean by that is I also had a corporate job. I worked at Scotiabank. I was a senior manager in wealth management for 7 years at Scotiabank. And 4 years ago, I quit my full-time well-paying, juicy paycheck to pursue my professional career in comedy 4 years ago. Since that, it's been the craziest, fulfilling, insanely painful, amazing, beautiful roller coaster-like journey. And you previously spent 6 years as a managing director at a Toronto-based creative communications agency that works with clients including Lyft, Telus, and Sony Pictures Television. How did you go from that to, hey, why don't we go ahead and create something that will make it easier for millions of Canadians to prepare for and deal with death in a digital age? What was the train of thought? How did you jump from that to Willful?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think you have to go back to entrepreneurship as a theme in my life. I mean, I grew up, I think a lot of entrepreneur success stories that you hear, their parents were entrepreneurs and small business owners, their grandparents, it ran in their blood. And I was not that person. I grew up with parents who, my dad was a longtime community newspaper journalist. My mom was a marketing executive at a big tech company, Nortel for any Canadians listening, which is no longer around. But I had this example of corner offices and, being loyal to the man and getting one job and staying for 30 years. So when I went to journalism school, it was with the goal of working at a big company. And my dream was to make six figures working for the big company, getting to travel like my mom to trade shows and working in marketing. And then about a year out of school, I was recruited as the second employee to go work at a startup a friend of a friend was launching. And I didn't even know what the word startup meant. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but through that experience, I just fell in love with the idea of building something from nothing and solving a problem and kind of being in charge of your own destiny. So the short answer is, I think I am not an ideas person. I've never had a good business idea.
Really?
I am the person who people bring in to help them execute on their ideas. So all of the credit goes to my husband, Kevin. When his uncle passed away, as I mentioned earlier, that's when he kind of said, I want to quit my job at the cement plant. I hate it. I don't want to do this. I want to go start a tech business, even though I have no background experience. I can't code. I have never worked in an office setting. I've always worked in trades. And I said, yeah, go pursue your passion. Hopefully, like your wife said to you, here's my blessing. I'll pay the bills. We had no kids, no mortgage. Like, this is the best time to do it. And then slowly, and I also said to him, like, I wish you picked a bit of a sexier business idea. Like, really, you're going to do like wills and estate planning? Like, this seems, could we not do like a clothing brand or like an alcohol brand or something cool? But he was so passionate about it because he saw firsthand the problem and kind of immersed himself in it. So he recruited me to slowly, I say recruited, but really it was like slowly wore me down over about a year. Every day being like, this is such an interesting problem. I need you to come help me. And I need someone to come and like run the operational side of it. So when I got bored at my agency and was just thinking about, okay, what's the next thing? He was like, hello, I'm still here. Like, I check all your boxes, like, be in charge of your own destiny. Like, we can work together. It'll be this thing that we can grow together. And so that was in 2019. And yeah, the rest is history.
2019. Wow.
Yeah. So he launched it in 2018. Early 2018. And then I joined about a year later. And for that entire year, he basically did it solo with the help of a couple contractors. And every Sunday we would have a nice little nervous breakdown session where he would be like, here's all my problems, help me. But I have to give him credit. He's like, with no background, in this space, he was super resourceful and just managed to find all these lawyers to partner with and get it off the ground. So he got it to this certain level. And then I kind of came in and hopefully have elevated it.
It sounds like the numbers are insane. How many people you've helped with wills over the last 2 years?
Not millions. We have not helped millions. We hope to help millions. Yes. Yeah. So we have tens of thousands of people who have created their will, almost 100,000 documents created to date. So listen, we feel like we barely scratched the surface because our ultimate mission is to make sure every Canadian has an up-to-date executed will. I don't know if we'll ever get there because, there's a long way to go, but at least we've put a little dent in it.
That's incredible. I love how underrated passion and curiosity are. I mean, it sounds like Kevin was just like a man on a mission. Nobody was going to get him off that mission. That's incredible, to the point that you're like, okay, I'll join the mission.
Well, and he also, you have to have money to start a company, right?
Yeah.
He had to pay a developer. So he raised money from our friends and family. Now, listen, I don't have some like oil tycoon uncle who can just hand over like a $500,000 check. So we're talking, $5,000 from people who, probably didn't have a lot of money to be putting into companies like ours. So he went to, his mom and my mom, and like taking a $5,000 check from your soon to be mother-in-law was probably the scariest part, he would tell you. But a lot of them probably thought they were setting that check on fire, right? Just like a lot of early investors in startups. The stats are most startups fail. And Kev admittedly was not the profile of that, Ivy League educated, 5 exits under his belt, tons of business success. So I always joke at family holidays would have been really awkward if, he just lost it and 2 months later was back at the cement plant. But now it's really cool that, we have all these family and friends on our cap table, and they're part of the journey and have been supporting for the last few years.
It sounds a lot like our story a little bit, where my business partner and I, we quit our bank jobs. We were both senior managers, and we just, like, for me, I could not go back to the bank. I mean, it was a great school. I'm so grateful to Scotiabank for everything I learned there. In fact, I probably wouldn't be successful today with our corporate training and development business had we not gone through Scotia. Yeah. But I remember, like, oh my God, I gave myself like 1 year, saved up money. And I'm like, if I don't make 1 cent this year, I have enough to survive. But as the savings went down, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go back. And then I used to go to Toastmasters at Scotia Plaza, where my job was, where my former job was. And everybody would, like, I would say hi to everyone in the hallways. And they're like, hey, how's comedy? And I'm like, oh, it's incredible, man. But it was a lie, like the first year is horrible. You're not making any money. And then I'm like, failure is not an option. I mean, in full transparency, only 4 years now, like until today, we're making the same amount of money that we used to make at the bank. So it like set us back 4 years, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No. Well, and that's the funny part is, I said to Kev, okay, you have a year, right? Like, I'll pay the bills for a year at the agency. You go build this thing. And after a year, I was like, time's a ticking, like, single income household, we have goals. But it's funny. As soon as I joined Willful, I was like, oh my goodness, why would we pay ourselves when we could put that into other people? So you, as soon as you are your own boss and you have your own company, your compensation and your wealth building kind of takes a back seat to realizing your passion, getting it off the ground. I'm sure it's the same with you. And I can say with pride, I make, a third of what I did when I was running the agency now, but it's so much more fulfilling. Yeah. And to your point when Kev started Willful, same with you, he's like, there's no alternative where I go back to the cement plant. Like, that's not the alternative is, I guess I would like start something else, or I would figure it out. But once you've kind of run your own company, you also become a terrible employee, right? Like, nobody would want to be my boss because I'm so used to having autonomy and flexibility and calling the shots. And like, I don't know that I could ever go back to working at a bigger company.
Oh my God, that is such a great point. I'm really curious as to how you and Kevin started to feel in these first couple of years, because in my experience, being the owner of my time in many ways, it was hard for me to disconnect. And what I mean by that is, at the bank, when I left every day when I left the premises at 5 or 6 p.m. or 7 sometimes, I was on vacation. And it was until 9 a.m. amazing. Yeah. It was until the worst times towards the end where I just couldn't disconnect. Like Sundays, I was like, oh my God, tomorrow's Monday. But for the majority of that 7-year period, it was beautiful. When I was on vacation, I was on vacation. After 5 o'clock, I was on vacation until 9 a.m. But now I'm a little better. But the first couple years, I was like, every single second of the day is a potential hour that I could be working. So if I was playing soccer, or if I was at the movies, or if I was watching like The Notebook with my wife, I'm like, man, I could be like, I'm not making money. Like, I have to provide. I have to make this company successful. Failure is not an option. Was it hard for you and Kevin to disconnect and to really set boundaries? Okay, for these 3 hours, we're not going to talk about work, especially because you were both in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good question. I've admittedly always been, in any role I've been in, whether I've been working for someone else or myself, a type A workaholic, right? So when I was running the agency, I didn't start the agency. I had some ownership in it, but I was always on. I was working weekends. I would work on vacations, not because anybody was asking me to, but because I put the pressure on myself, and admittedly felt and still feel guilty when I'm not working. And it's taken me many years to get to a place where I realized that it's very, very unhealthy to work 24/7, to not take a break, and that no one is telling you as the entrepreneur that you need to work 24/7 to be productive. In fact, everybody else in my life, investors, family, colleagues, are saying, taking a break is actually the best thing that will help you as the CEO be productive and come with your best self. So I am my own worst enemy and my biggest critic. No one else is telling me to work harder. So it's definitely been a struggle. It's something that I don't think I'll ever be perfect at. But to be honest, having a child, I think, will help with that, because all of a sudden I'm going to have to compartmentalize my time. And Kevin and I mean, listen, the best thing about working with your spouse is that no one is ever judging you for working late or taking a call on a weekend, because we're both in it together and we're both building this dream together. But the downside of that is that there's moments where I'm like, I need to check out of work tonight. And then Kev will be like, hey, did you hear what happened in this meeting? And I'm like, no. So now I'm good at just being like, tonight is not a work night. Tonight is the night I'm watching Squid Game for 4 hours straight. And I don't want to look at my phone. And if you mention the word willful to me, I'm going to lose it. So we're pretty good at just setting that expectation.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it. I'm exactly the same. Now, the benefit is my wife works at a 9 to 5, at a corporate job. So she disconnects. And the best thing about a kid is that you have to be 100% 100% present.
Yeah.
If you're playing, but you're thinking about Willful, he's going to hey, let's play. Let's sing this song 100 times. And it really, really, really makes you be present, which is great. I mean, it's going to be a beautiful ride. I love this quote from Tony Robbins, which is great because we're both the type A type of person that likes to work or needs to work or feels guilty if you're not feeling productive.
Yes.
I always feel guilty if I don't feel productive. In fact, I think the word is grumpy. So I kind of need to check the box. Even if I just meditate in the morning, I'm like, okay, I did something. But for me to just lie on the beach and drink pina colada, I can't do that. I'm like, I'm wasting my time. How many pina coladas can you drink? I don't care. I want to do something. But so this is the quote from Tony Robbins. And it goes, I used to achieve to be happy. Now I happily achieve. And why that really connects with me is because for the majority of my life, or all of my life, including today, I kind of derived self-worth from achievement. And when I was at the bank and I quit, I didn't realize my identity was, I'm a banker. I make a lot of money. I'm in a suit and tie. I party downtown. I have my condo. And then when I wasn't that, I'm like, oh my God, who am I if I'm not making money? I'm not in a suit and tie living downtown all the time. And I struggled with that. So I've had to be really intentional to derive my self-worth from other things that are not career/money related, that are not, I killed it at this stand-up comedy show, that are not I got this keynote or I did this big project. It has to come internally. So what I've identified is the more I derive my self-worth from external things, I'm in trouble. I need to get it from the inside. So I've started since 2017, right before I quit, I started to do meditation to help me with any potential anxiety. I run a lot. I journal. I have my gratitude. I really organize my week so that I know, hey, this is what I'm going to, you actually saw my Kanban board on LinkedIn.
There you go. Yeah.
So I'm a control freak in many ways, but if I have chaos inside of order, that's fine. Like I'll schedule my fun time so that, because if otherwise I would never have fun. Because I'm just like, I need to achieve, I need to grow the company. What things have you and Kevin done to not derive your self-worth from achievement, but to happily achieve?
That's a great quote and anecdote to follow it up. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think you said this podcast is all about vulnerability. My work is my self-worth, right? It always has been. And that's why I've never seen any role as a 9-to-5, even. Well, I don't ever think I have had a 9-to-5, actually. There's always been some element of taking work home with you, but that's part of the reason why we're having our first child, and I'm 36 years old, because, for a lot of my late 20s and early 30s, I was like, no, like this is my prime career growth time. I don't want to, I really resented this idea that, especially as the female in the relationship, I would have to interrupt my entire career trajectory, which was so important, the most important thing to me other than, family and friends. And it's so funny. As soon as we got that positive pregnancy test, it just changed in my mind. I was like, wait, why did I think this would be like a burden or something that would take me away from it? If anything, it's going to add to our life. And it's going to be something that, yes, of course, takes me away from it a bit. But I'm so lucky that as an entrepreneur, I can set how long I want to be away. I can pop into our Slack if I'm feeling bored in the middle of the night one day. Like I can define what that means and how it affects my career. But to answer your question around, what do we do that isn't work and how have I prioritized that? For me, I've also been intentional about exercise because to me, it's just the best mental health tool. I do not meditate. I do not journal, except for the Mahara Mindfulness Journal. My two best friends started. It's a monthly journal. I do that because it's once a month. So I find that palatable. But for me, it's reading. I love reading, and only fiction. So I probably have read some of those business books that you have up there, but again, it was that pressure of like, oh, I should read business books because productive people read business books in their free time. And then I was like, wait, reading is one of my only hobbies, right? Other than traveling and working out and working, reading is kind of my thing. So I made a rule earlier this year that like reading is my pleasure thing. I'm not going to force myself to read business books. And I love reading because it's something that you can't multitask during. If I'm watching a Netflix show, it's so easy to just pick up my iPhone and look at Slack or check my email. Whereas when you're reading, you're totally immersed and you can't do anything else. So anyways, I found that if anyone else struggles with how do you actually disconnect, find an activity that you can't do anything else while you're doing it.
Yes.
That's the only way that you can force yourself to turn your mind off.
That's so spot on. One of my favorite podcasters, Naval, he's a big, do you know Naval?
From Angel List?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, he is a genius. So I follow him on Instagram, but I can't tell you how many times I've listened to the 3-hour episode on his podcast, and it's called How to Get Rich, like all the episodes. And it's not necessarily about making money, but how to be wealthy in all areas of your life. I think you would love it. And
interesting. What
he says, I'll send it to you. Okay. I just added you on Instagram. I'll send it to you on Instagram. So perfect. He says that what people think they're looking for is peace of mind. But what they're really looking for is peace from mind. And to connect with what you just said, when you're reading, you're not listening to the voice in your head all the time because you're present. You get that peace from the mind. You're not listening to that voice. You're just doing the one thing. I think that's why a lot of people like to do extreme sports. Because when you're surfing or when you're snowboarding, you're not thinking, hey, what about that email I was supposed to send to? You're not. You so can't. True. So I think that's why a lot of people like to go to the beach. Like half the people, at least in Latin America, they go to the beach and they don't even go into the ocean. But at the beach, I think the real reason is because you can't do anything but be on the beach. And that's the peace from mind that you get. You're literally doing the one thing. And
I love that, peace from mind. Because it's true. I mean, listen, even my husband would say the most annoying habit I have is whenever we're watching a Netflix show, I'm always picking up my phone, and it's not always work related. It's, checking out Instagram, looking at TikTok, reading the news, but we've really been conditioned as a society to always be multitasking. And there's, behavioral research that says you're much less effective when you're multitasking.
100%.
And yet we do it all day, every day, right? So I think if I had to set out an intention for my own life, it would be to find things that you can't multitask at. And sometimes multitasking is great. I love listening to a podcast while I get ready in the morning or while I'm cooking, like they're cleaning. Like nobody wants to just clean, right? Like if I can listen to a podcast while I'm doing that or some great music, obviously sometimes multitasking makes something more enjoyable, but in general, I'd say multitasking actually makes things less enjoyable because you are not as present, right?
Yeah. You know what? I've become so obsessed about productivity that I actually teach a workshop on productivity. So what you're saying is absolutely right. And there's actually 2 words for it. So multitasking is bad because one activity deters from the other. It kind of takes away from the other. But what you're saying is absolutely true. And some people call it chunking, where one thing will not take away from the other. For example, you listening to music or a podcast while you're cleaning is not going to make your cleaning more horrible. I mean, unless you're like dancing crazy.
Yeah. Ineffectively cleaning because I'm so excited.
Exactly. So, or having a meeting while walking. That's amazing. You're doing both things, and they're both great. So the chunking is good, but multitasking is bad because you're not doing any of the 2 activities well, and you're not enjoying them either. And so amazing. All right. I was talking about you with my wife a couple hours ago, and we read your bio. I showed her your profile. I mean, she's the producer of the podcast. So we were talking about you, and she's like, she's pregnant. She was pregnant like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she's like, I'm really interested. Can you ask Erin what additional challenges do you think she's experienced as a businesswoman? I mean, she is the CEO. She has her own company. And you just mentioned, like, you always kind of resent it. Like, why do I have to interrupt my career? Which is exactly what my wife thinks. And millions of women think. And I totally agree. What other additional challenges have you had to overcome in your career because you're a woman?
Yeah, listen, it's a great question. And I'm going to be honest, I've always been in very female-dominated roles, companies, and school programs at school. So I've been very fortunate to feel lucky and to be a woman in tech and to have been afforded a lot of opportunities because of that. I went to journalism school where almost, the majority of the class was women, worked at a PR agency, mostly women, went to work for a female entrepreneur. My agency was, I think, like 3/4 women. In fact, at a certain point, we were like, maybe we should get more gender diversity, but it was adding more men, not more women, because we were so female dominated. And then Willful, I mean, my 50% of our C-suite is female and half of our company is as well. So, I would say the whole, what opportunities have you missed out on or found challenging because of being a woman? I actually thankfully have been shielded from that. Even though we've raised venture capital funding and, you hear a lot about how women find challenges with that. But how do you have a career and a business while starting a family? That's a challenge for sure. Right. And I did a couple of things to mitigate it. The first thing was we hired a really amazing COO named Julia in 2020. Right as the pandemic was breaking out. And partly that was because we needed help with operations. But it was partly because of future planning. I said, if I'm going to go on mat leave, Kev doesn't handle the operational stuff at Willful. He does a lot of product work and market research. And, he wouldn't take over my role. So we needed someone who would become my right-hand person, who would be able to step into that. And I was honest with her when we hired her. Part of this is because, we need your skill set and we're so excited to have you. But part of it is because I'm going to take a mat leave at some point. And she kind of knew that going into it. And now, I have, being type A, very anal, I have a massive mat leave plan in Notion, and it's like extremely detailed, and she's really excited to take over. And so that was a good investment. And for any entrepreneur or business owner listening, that's the best thing you can do, is have a right-hand person who really would take over your role, not someone else in the business that handles a different area, but someone who's been shadowing you for 12 to 18 months, learning all of those things, because then you're just going to I have the confidence. I have zero worries that Julia will be able to handle things while I'm away. In fact, I'm excited to see what the team does without me sticking my nose in and meddling in things all the time, right? But the other challenge is like the FOMO of it. So we taped Dragon's Den, which for anyone who isn't in Canada is like the Shark Tank of Canada, where, it's a TV show where entrepreneurs pitch successful investors. And our episode is supposed to air in December, and I'm due November 12th. And we also just found out that digital wills are becoming a thing December 1st in BC. So you'll be able to electronically sign a will for the first time ever in Canada. And I'm like, wait, all of this stuff is happening when I'm supposed to be off. Like, I don't want to miss this stuff, right? So I think the biggest challenge has been preparation and coverage, just logistically, but then concurrently coming to terms with the fact that, like, the business is going to go on every day without me. And I want to be a part of it because I like my job and I love the company. And then I'd say the third challenge is like the expectation setting. So, a lot of my friends have corporate jobs, and when they go on mat leave, they're like, bye, I'll see you in a year, done and dusted. Kind of like you said, they're on vacation. It's out of their mind. They might have a replacement who's been hired. They don't even have to worry about it. Whereas for me, I don't know, like, am I going to be off for 6 weeks, 9, 4 months? Like, am I going to be one of those moms who suffers from postpartum depression? Am I going to be someone who it's a breeze and I'm ready to come back? So I think that unknown, as someone who's very type A and who likes to have a plan, keeping that open-ended and just saying, I'm going to see how it goes and we'll go from there, has been very difficult.
Oh, I am the same. Obviously, I didn't have the baby. My wife had it, obviously. But to me, it's hard to let go as well, because I'm a control freak. And I kind of take pride in it. I mean, I have accomplished what I've accomplished, and it has taken me to places that I'm incredibly proud of. So I think that it's hard to let go, but that doesn't mean you should change, that we're going to change who we are. I think when you said I love reading fiction, amazing. Like, don't fight it. When you love to work and that's your fun. In fact, I think you should meet Crystal O. Young. I used to work with her at Scotia. She said the same exact thing. She was on the podcast, and she is the head of customer experience at Reuters at Thomson Reuters here in Toronto downtown. And I think you would love her. And she said the same thing. She's like, I don't know what I do for fun. I love my job. Like, I work out because that's the only way for me to work better after. And you don't have to fight it. Like, for example, I have to really think hard. I'm like, am I doing this because it's going to make me feel more productive, or because I enjoy it? And sometimes I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm still doing it because I enjoy it regardless. Like, it doesn't matter if it's going to make me more productive or not. I'm doing it because I clearly have a passion for it. So I'm like, should I read like fiction book? Because I have thought of that. I'm like, I want to read all these business books. It's like my passion to learn more and make my company more successful and be a better comedian and be more productive. I love it. So why fight it? One of my favorite quotes from Naval, the podcast, is escape competition through authenticity. So, like, people who have accomplished great things in life, they don't do it by mitigating their weaknesses. Obviously, you have to have a certain level to be able to perform at a high level, but they do so by tripling down on their strengths. So naturally, if you love doing things, you're going to get better. And if it's your passion, it could become your strength. So why fight it? I think you're on the right track. I think we're all here on the right track. I want to ask you about staffing and the team, because as a type A, which like me, at the beginning, when you create your own company, you want to do everything, and you have to do everything because there's not a lot of people doing it. But then you think that you do better. You think you do everything better than everybody else because you're the only one who has been doing it. There's this book, business book called the eMyth, and it's one of like the best small business books in the world, ranked eMyth by Michael E. Gerber. And the eMyth, the entrepreneurial myth, is that people think that because they do the technical job well, they should start a company that does the technical job. For example, if I bake amazing pies, I'm like, oh, then I should start a bakery. But it's a myth, because the skill set that you need to bake amazing cakes or pies is different than the skill set required to run a bakery, which is more managerial. So at the beginning of the book, he tells you there's 3 roles: the technical side of the business, the managerial side, which is the day-to-day running the company, and then the entrepreneurial side, which leads more towards ideas in the future. And it's very rare when you get one person that has all the 3 skills.
Yeah.
So what have you and Kev done to let go as the company started and start hiring people? What has that process been like? Has it been challenging? Has it been amazing? Or has it been just crazy and you don't like it?
Yeah, it's a really great thesis for that book, because it's so true. I find, especially with consultants and freelancers, they do a thing really well, right? They are amazing at SEO. And so naturally they start consulting and they get clients, and then those clients become too many for them to handle. And so they hire someone, and then all of a sudden they're running this little agency for SEO services, and they find themselves managing 4 or 5 people, and they're spending 10% of their time on the thing that they love, which is the SEO, and 90% of their time on managing people, managing the business, collecting invoices. And they wake up one day and say, either I love this and I'm born to be the managerial side of it, or I miss doing the thing that I was great at. And I feel lucky that I love managing people. My passion is the company operations, the HR, the finance, the legal, the managing of people, helping people grow in their careers. And not everybody loves that, right? Like a lot of people just love doing the damn thing that they were hired for. And we have staff like that. We have engineers who don't really want to progress to manage people, don't want to become an engineering manager or eventually a CTO. They just love coding and they just want to solve technical challenges. And that's great, because you need those people in an organization, right? The ones who don't want to climb the ladder up to CTO, who are very happy to just be that excellent individual contributor. But you also need people who want to progress, because you need managers who are going to, and who want to learn to become great managers. But with that, there's an acceptance that your day is going to become very different, right? So I think it's, as a small team, we are able to kind of manage both and really just keep a pulse on where people are. And I came into the business knowing my strength is management. My passion is company operations. My I guess expertise, or my thing that I would start, would be a PR. Like I had a PR agency. I love media relations and PR and brand building, but I can't do that as CEO. And that's actually the biggest challenge. Is we have a PR agency, we have a marketing team. And when I said I meddle, it's because I love PR. So I'm always in there like, what about this? And what about that? But like, I don't have time as CEO to be, pitching media or developing our stories all the time, because I'm out raising funding or, working on other stuff that's at the operational level. So That's kind of how we've approached it. But when you said those three areas, like Kev is that entrepreneurial guy, right? Like I swear to God, Stephan, every day he comes to me, he can probably hear me right now. He's gonna try to dispute this, but like he'll be like, what if we launched Willful in Venezuela? What if we launched like an arm of the business that does this? And I'm like, dude, like the hardest part of a business is focus. And I love that you are the entrepreneurial one here. That's why we're all sitting here today and you pay my paycheck. But we have to focus. But it's great because I'm not that person. And he's over there just dreaming about what Willful could be and mapping that out and doing all of that. And we're kind of down in the weeds or I'm kind of the bird's eye view. And then we have the team that's in the weeds, and those three layers, to your point about the book, that's what makes a great company tick.
Oh, so good. And the thing is, it takes, like, I'm so happy. I think it's Willful is successful because you guys had other jobs. Had you started to do Willful as your first job, it would have immediately failed, for sure.
100%.
And you need people like Kev, and you need people like you, because otherwise, every strength has a shadow. So every strength has a weakness, and the weakness of Kev, of the entrepreneurial, which I'm a bit like that. I'm like dreaming all day. But the thing is, if you're dreaming all day, you're not executing.
You're not doing.
And my wife is a doer. I'm a dreamer. So I'm like, what if I create this podcast and maybe I could interview like high performers? I'm not even joking. I was thinking about it for like 3 months. And when I said it out loud, in like 20 minutes, my wife had gone on Amazon, bought the mics, bought the whole thing, bought the recorder, and it was like talk to the designers, blah, 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 and the podcast was born. But I would have never started it by myself. It would have taken me like 3 years. And the other side of what you just said is, I love it. You need people that just want to do the technical job. Because guess what? I wrote more comedy at the bank than what I do now. Because I'm so immersed, I have to do so many administrative things still and those are the money-making things that sometimes the creative side takes a back seat, which sucks. So it's really good to have those people that just do it. Because guess what? If you end up managing people and you're not good at it, you're going to end up hating it. And if it's your own company, like the person that does the pies, and now you have a bakery, you're going to end up hating your entire life.
100%. And you have to be honest with yourself, right? Like, I think I was honest with myself that it's okay that I gravitate towards what people would think are these boring things, like managing people and HR and legal. Like, I totally own the fact that I love doing that stuff. But you get this situation where actually a lot of people scale back down. They start that SEO agency and then they realize, I just want to be the person doing the thing with a couple clients, and they scale it down and they just become the greatest SEO consultant. They manage their own time. They still have to do things like invoicing, or maybe they outsource that, but they get to spend the bulk of their time doing the thing they love. And that's another part of the pressure of entrepreneurship, I think, is the pressure to be huge, right? The more people you have at your company, the more successful you are. I really resent that, because the one individual SEO consultant might be charging $1,000 an hour for their time. They might be the happiest, the most successful, but because they're a solo consultant, they're not as successful as the 10-person agency, right? And I think it comes back to what you said about being intentional and kind of just being honest with yourself about what makes you happy.
And thinking like, what would my perfect calendar look like? Okay, 3 weeks on the beach, 1 week skiing, 2 weeks in Costa Rica in the forest or whatever, and a backpacking trip in Europe. I mean, if you have the money, why not? Like, why? And this is another thing that I struggle with. I feel guilty if I'm having fun. So I have to feel like I'm like, hey, chill out, man. Like, we're just having fun. Just be present. So, and then I think one of the biggest reasons why people hate their bosses is because the bosses are not meant to be bosses. Like, maybe they were just meant to still be doing SEO. And I think what happens is I'm like, okay, I'm the VP in many companies. And I'm like, oh, this guy is good at SEO. He's the best at SEO of my team of 15. So he must be the best guy to manage the team of 15. But no, not really. Maybe it's the worst thing you could do for the team of 15. So
yeah, it's a great point.
We're solving lives here, not just through wills, but through advice. Okay, we've come to the rapid fire. We've come to the rapid fire part of the interview. And you don't have to answer quickly, but it is the rapid fire question part of it. So boom, boom. No
Brevity
thinking.
is my biggest challenge, so I will work on it.
Beautiful. Okay. Name one thing you've done in the past 3 months that makes you feel proud.
I think this is an easy one. Growing a human. Pretty cool. I don't have to do anything. I just sit around all day, but yeah, growing a human. It's pretty cool.
Beautiful. As you've gotten older, what has become increasingly important?
Saying no.
Oof, amazing. If you could invite 3 people to your home for dinner, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Number 1 would be Paul Walker, because I am obsessed with him. And if I wasn't married to Kev, would have wanted to be married to Paul Walker. My second would probably be Sarah Blakely from Spanx. She is kind of, I think, the best example of entrepreneurial success from a female entrepreneur. And I'd love to just chat with her about that. And then the third, oh my goodness. I mean, I'm going to default to Oprah just because I feel like she is like very soothing, and she would also probably bring a lot of great food from her farm in Santa Barbara.
And she retweeted you twice.
And there you go. Yeah, we're basically BFFs. So she'd probably accept my dinner invite.
What did the tweet say?
It was, well, listen, I'm no comedian, Stephan, but it was when her network launched in Canada, OWN, and I tweeted kind of like when she gave away the cars, I was like, you get OWN and you get OWN, and she retweeted it. So I guess I made Oprah smile the day her network launched.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, if you could study with any expert in the world, who would you work with and what would you study?
That is a great question. My favorite business book of all time, before I gave up reading business books, is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And I'm very fascinated by habit formation. Actually, it's interesting. I got a new iPhone yesterday because I dropped mine in the sink like an idiot. And if you open the browser, the space to enter the URL is at the bottom of the screen instead of the top. And it reminded me every time my finger gravitated to the top of my screen this morning to look up a website, how powerful habit formation is in our mind and how easy it is to form a new habit, but yet how so many of us don't form good habits because our brains stop us. So I would work with Charles or some sort of habit behavioral psychology expert on helping me form great habits.
Amazing. He just came out with a new book, Smarter, Faster, Better, The Transformative Power of Real Productivity.
I read that one too. He's my exception. I'd read anything he wrote. I'd read the phone book if he wrote it.
Yeah, I read The Power of Habit. To me, the most fascinating thing was how triggers get you to do the thing. Yeah. And the most fascinating story from the book to me was the role mint or like freshness played in the success of toothpaste and habits all over the world of people actually brushing their teeth, because it wasn't really a thing like 100 years ago. But once I think after the Second World War, I don't know, they started putting like mint in it, and after it gave you like kind of like that like the really good feeling. So you started to crave it and it started to form that habit. Amazing.
Yeah, it's such a good book.
Complete the following phrase. I lose track of time when I
am reading fiction.
If you had to give up what you do professionally, what would you do instead?
I mean, the only answer I have is I would start a different business.
Yes. Okay. What do you consider your top non-business achievement?
Oh my goodness. I would say I've made some savvy real estate decisions, including purchasing this house I'm sitting in Prince Edward County, where we now live full time. So yes, I think I've had good instincts and timing in the real estate market.
Beautiful. What are two or three things you've always wanted to do, which are still on your bucket list?
Get a dog. In the journal that I told you about, the Mahara monthly journal that my friends started, they have this bucket list thing. And I swear to God, there's one thing on my bucket list, and it's get a black lab. And I realized maybe how sad it is that there's only one thing on my bucket list, but that either tells you I've done a lot of the things I wanted to do, or that I really want a dog. The other ones would just be travel, countries like Argentina and Thailand that I haven't visited. And Kevin and I have been to 6 continents. We have not been to Antarctica. So that is on our list for some time in the future as well.
That's amazing. What has been one of your happiest moments?
I would say our wedding. I mean, again, my husband's within earshot, so if I didn't say that, he'd probably be like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, he always reminds me of all of the things that we could have bought instead of spending money on a Casa Loma wedding in Toronto, which is not cheap. But yeah, it was a great day. And we got married in October of 2018. And then seeing the nightmare everyone has gone through during COVID with weddings, that we did our honeymoon in Fiji, Australia, New Zealand. So the wedding combined with the honeymoon, that was like perfection. I like my husband, which is also good.
Of course. Yeah. We got married August 2018. And, nice. And we are so happy, obviously, about the wedding, but imagine if you had to postpone it or cancel it because of COVID. That I feel so much for those people.
I know.
If you could start a charitable organization, what would be the cause?
Dogs.
What book have you recommended most to others?
A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery, my favorite book of all time.
Beautiful. What is one thing people always assume about you?
I think this is a funny one during COVID. People correctly assume that I am tall. Now, I'm not super tall. I'm only 5'6.5", but I think I come across as a tall person. Yeah,
you do come across as a tall person.
There you go.
One thing you can't live without.
Pizza.
Dogs.
Also dogs, but pizza.
Okay. Second last question. What are 3 things you believe you need to be happy?
Ooh, good question.
A will?
Well, yeah. My husband, for sure. My family, and wine.
Amazing.
Now I can't have it right now. I'm still happy without it, but I'm very excited for that first class, Stephan.
It sounds like a lot of first-time moms, including my wife, by the way, they don't drink while, I mean, you don't have to get wasted, but they don't drink during pregnancy. But second-time moms, they're like, whatever. I'm just going to have a couple, like a glass here and there. I don't care anymore. We have so many friends like that.
I've been sticking pretty strictly to sparkling water, more because I just wouldn't enjoy it, knowing that, anyways, we'll wait until post-birth for that first glass.
I love it. All right. And the last question of the podcast, everybody gets this question, all the guests, and it's called the champagne question. And it goes like this. If we were to meet a year from now, 2022, with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Erin's life?
What day is it today? Okay. That's a good question.
Apart from my birthday, which is next week.
Yes, of course. Obviously, aside from that. Listen, I'd say we'd either be celebrating, me successfully keeping a human alive for almost a year, or we would be celebrating a Willful milestone. What? I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I mean, listen, those are, my life is pretty laser focused on work and, baby right now. So it'd be one of those two things.
Beautiful. And I think you got it right. I mean, I think a lot of people who have too many passions, they don't focus, and you need to be able to execute and focus to do stuff. But if you have too many things that you're passionate about, you're not going to accomplish much in any of them. So family, business, and obviously dogs are your priorities. So
dogs, yes, of which we are getting one very soon.
So that your kid can grow up with it and can be used to it.
Exactly. And they're just the best. Have you been on TikTok lately? Every good TikTok video involves a dog.
You know what? I had to get off of TikTok because I couldn't stop seeing TikTok, and it was messing with my type A brain. I'm like, I could be doing other things. Okay. Well, Erin, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I really admire you. I admire Kevin. And the best thing about it all is that, isn't it amazing to have a company that actually makes people's lives better? Like you're actually making a difference in people's lives. You're making Canada a better country just by doing Willful. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for your time. Do you have any closing remarks?
Just thank you. That's very lovely of you to say. And I agree. I spent a lot of time at agencies selling products and things where, does it really help the world? And so I definitely sleep well at night knowing that we have a really great mission. But yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. And you've made me think a lot about how I can analyze my super type A personality and be more intentional about enjoying the downtime.
Yes. And the key to that is feeling productive as you have fun. In other words, scheduling it. It sounds
scheduled fun, the best kind of fun, right? Stephan?
Yeah, because you're like, I did what I said I was going to do. So you feel more productive. Ladies and gentlemen, Erin Bury and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer podcast. Have a good day. Have a good night. Ciao, ciao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer podcast. Arrivederci, my people.